What's up, everybody? In today's video, we're going to be talking about quarantining your animals.
Specifically new animals. Whenever you get a new animal, it's always very good to quarantine it, just in case there's certain parasites, viruses, ectoparasites. So we're going to talk about all of that in this video.
Make sure you like and subscribe, and
2 thumbs up.
all right, let's take this off. So with this craziness going on with COVID-19, we felt like it was a good time to, talk about quarantining your animals because we're all in quarantine. So it's perfect. But basically, quarantining is important when you have a collection of animals, or maybe if you just have one other pet, gecko or whatever reptile or animal you have. If you're getting a new animal to your collection, it's always important to quarantine that specific animal, the new one that you get. House them preferably in a different area, a different room, and just watch them, make sure it's eating properly, make sure the stools look normal. If you really want to go, the extra mile, you could get a stool sample done. You need to get like 1 or 2 done just to make sure nothing is wrong with the animal, that doesn't have any parasites or anything. But it's important because let's say you get a new animal and then that new animal is carrying something and you don't know it, and it's housed right next to your pet that you've kept for 10 years, and your pet isn't acclimated to this parasite that this animal might have, and you touch the animal, then you touch your pet, and then you transmit that disease or that parasite or whatever it may be, and then you have and then your old pet can perish, or it could get really sick. So that's why it's important to quarantine. Make sure the new animals you get are in good condition before you start to make them interact, or before you have a chance to transmit it to your other collection.
Yeah, it's also very important to not being in the same general area, but I wouldn't recommend handling that new animal and then going to handle your existing animals, because that's how these diseases can spread. Let's say the new gecko poops on your hand, and then you don't notice it. It's very small. Then you go grab your other animals, and then boom, they have those parasites, if that animal did have parasites. So it's very important, to be safe, practice good hygiene with those animals.
Yeah. And just like we've been having to practice good hygiene with ourselves, washing our hands, making sure, if you cough or you sneeze, you're on your elbow, kind of those type of things. There's a way to practice good hygiene with our pets as well. So that's why we're making this video.
Yeah, we also like to recommend that you at least quarantine your new animal for around 30 days. You could definitely do more, and more would be better. But that's what we think is the minimum you should do, because by then you should generally see some watery poops, or sometimes even worms in poop. If there's issues, the animal could start crashing as well, and usually that could take a week or 2 after getting the animal. You're gonna start seeing some signs if it does have an issue with it. So we say at least 30 days would be minimum of quarantine. So as I mentioned before, ectoparasites are very important to take care of whenever getting your new animal. The reason why you want to put it in a different room is because if it does have ectoparasites...
For those that don't know what ectoparasites...
I was going to say like mites.
Oh, okay. There you go.
Ectoparasites like mites, like snake mites or lizard mites, they can spread.
Ticks,
ticks, mites, those things they're going to be producing on the animal, and then they're going to be traveling. They could travel through a whole rack, through an entire room. So that's why you do want to keep it in a separate area.
Ideally.
Yeah, ideally.
Especially if you have snakes or... Lizards don't get mites very often. Blue-tongued skinks can. Some of the other lizards that have those kind of scales do.
Like
abronias, blue-tongued skinks. Crested geckos, the mites that infect crested geckos are going to be like red mites, but it's super, super rare. You usually see those red mites around the eyes or the armpits of wild-caught geckos. A lot of flying geckos bring them. Sometimes tokays.
Leaf-tailed geckos.
The leaf-tailed geckos could have them. So it's just something that you got to think about and take care of. But
yeah, and mites can cause a lot of problems. Not just that they're draining their blood, they could also transmit parasites to them, they can transmit diseases, and they can make them anemic and they can potentially pass away. And a lot of times when let's say you get a new animal, you're not going to see mites right away a lot of the times unless it's a heavy infestation. These guys, a lot of them are microscopic, so you're not going to be able to see them. So that's why it's important to quarantine them, and then you could treat them. Sometimes, we treat animals as precautionary. Just depends on the type of animal it is, because some animals are way more sensitive to these mite kills than other animals. So like, for example, blue tongues, abronias, that stuff, they can handle it pretty well. So we like to treat it as a precaution when we get new ones. There's a bunch of different kinds of mite kill remedies, or mite kill, like, from ZooMed, Exoterra, they all make their own kind. You just got to try out which one you like best. There's even some organic versions where they're called predatory mites, which it's a much longer process, but it's a mite that eats snake mites and stuff like that.
So yeah, what we recommend, now we're no veterinarians, so we're not going to give out advice on how to get rid of your mites, because that's not what we do. But you can Google it, you can look for your veterinarian, ask for their advice, because it also depends on the type of mite it is. So make sure you contact, do some research online, and also contact your fellow veterinarian.
So like I was saying, you could do the precautionary treatment. You could also, if you see them, you got to treat for them. And so, like I was saying before, some are hard to see. So something you can do is put it like in a damp, humid container, like a deli cup, or with paper towel on the bottom. And a lot of times when like the animal gets wet, the mites kind of start freaking out, start moving a little bit. So it's going to be a lot easier to see, or you can see them on the paper towel itself. Then that animal has mites. So then you begin treatment for that animal.
Now, when you're bringing in animals, when you're buying animals that are wild caught or field collected, a lot of times these animals, I would say 99.9% of the time, these animals have some sort of parasite, or, something that could definitely transmit to your other animals. Now, if, these animals in the wild, they live with these parasites and everything, but ideally you don't want them to have that in captivity, because they can transmit to your other animals. So you are going to have to treat it. Now, there's a lot of different medications that you could give to your animals if they do have some sort of parasite, Panicure, all that stuff. But what we recommend is taking stool samples to your veterinarian, getting the parasite identified, and then that's going to help you target what medication you're going to be using.
Yeah, like there's like Panicure is very popular for a dewormer, but Panicure only treats a certain species of parasites.
Exactly.
Some are like certain species of coccidia need to be treated by X and Y, antibiotics. So there's different things that require different treatments. That's why it's really important to get that stool sample and identify the exact parasite species or multiple parasite species. Because you can treat an animal, and if it doesn't treat that specific parasite, you're going to be doing more harm to it than good.
Exactly. That's something that we emphasize with a lot. If an animal, if you're treating an animal with a medication that it's going to dehydrate them, or it's going to cause some other, it's going to give them some, additional stress, or some other sort of, it's going to give them secondary effects. You might do more harm than good when you're treating the animal, if you're not treating for the adequate parasite or whatever the animal has. So it's very important to identify exactly what's wrong with the animal first, and then go about the treatment. So like we were saying, a lot of these animals, when they come in, they have, these wild animals, they come in, they have parasites, and a lot of the times they can live with the parasites and their immune system will suppress them for their whole life pretty much. But when they get imported, a lot of times that's a lot of stress on an animal, and they could be dehydrated, and that's just a recipe for disaster if the animal isn't hardy enough. So especially with like chameleons, or like some of the more delicate gecko species, it's important that when these animals come in, if it's an import, if it's a wild caught animal, it's important that you get this animal hydrated. And obviously you leave it alone. You want to set up obviously the perfect environment for them, but you don't want to stress it out. You don't want to be handling it too much. You want to let it acclimate, and then later on you can start to interact with the animal and do whatever you want to do. But it's important to get them hydrated, get some, if you just get an animal in, it's most likely not going to eat right away. So just let it chill, try feeding it in like a day or two. and let it acclimate slowly, and then start to see if it's gonna need any medication. Because I wouldn't necessarily treat an animal the first day it gets in, because it might be a little too stressed out and it might do more harm than good.
Yeah, and all that stress is going to just weaken its immune system, which allows those parasites, viruses, diseases, whatever, to just take over the animal.
All right, so this is a gargoyle that started to develop some sort of eye issue, and as you can see, it sadly lost its eye. But this is one of the animals that we did have to quarantine. We had to put it in a completely separate room. This guy's in the office right now. His other eye is fine, but then you look at this eye and it's not very pretty. So this animal, it's in the office. There's no animals in the office. Basically, we put him away from all the other gargoyles, and until we figure out exactly what happened, what went wrong with him, you know, we're gonna have to keep him separate from everybody else. So the eye that you see there, obviously it looks like it popped or something. It might have been an injury, but it's most likely an infection. So we're just keeping this guy separate until we figure out what exactly happened. This is another animal that we had to kind of put by himself, because he is a wild-caught emerald swift, but he started to lose a lot of weight, started to get really thin. If you know about emerald swift, they're usually pretty plump. And this guy, it's hard to see from here, but his spine was showing a little bit, so we did have to kind of put him by himself. He's hanging in there. He's doing okay for now. He's been drinking water and eating crickets. But yeah, so this is another instance where you would have to quarantine an animal, make sure it's away from any other animals. You don't want it to be housed together with any other animals. That way you could kind of like isolate whatever this thing has. And when you figure out what it is, you could treat it. All right, guys, with all this craziness that's going on in the world right now, we hope you took some information from this video and you found it useful. And, use this as a good time to reflect on how you're keeping your animals. Make sure they're being kept clean and properly. That way there's no diseases that could spread, amongst them.
And if you guys like our content, make sure as always to hit the like button and subscribe, and make sure you follow us on all of our other social media accounts: Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, Facebook, Twitter. I'm running out of fingers in this hand. We have so many different accounts. As always, guys, we love you. Please stay safe right now, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you, guys.